The next story, it's called The Answer of the Dead. Quite interesting too. When Mamilla, who later became a famous preacher, went to a master for personal guidance, the master asked him to explain the sound of one hand. You do not work hard enough, the master told him. You are too attached to food, wealth, material things, and this sound. You'd better die. This would solve the problem. Next time Mamilla went to his master, who asked him again what he had to show him, relating to the sound of one hand. Mamilla immediately fell, pretending to be dead. Then the master said, You are dead for good, but what have you got to tell me about the sound of one hand? I haven't solved it yet, Mamilla responded, opening his eyes. Dead men don't speak, the master said. Get up and leave. Quite interesting too. Dead men don't speak. This has to do with an important factor that we have discussed in our previous video, which was the Oriental stories. And we said that in order to be able to achieve Gnosis, there are three factors of the evolution of the consciousness, which is the first one to die, the second one to be born again, rebirth, and the third one is the sacrifice. So we say that if you want to further investigate those matters, those subjects, you can study the book by Master Samuel Amber, which is called The Perfect Matrimony. And now we can say that the first factor, which is death, has to do with the psychological death. And it's quite interesting. We can see this in the physical plane here, that the student fell down, and the master told him something to test him, but the student was not that attentive, and so he responded, and he said that I haven't solved it yet. And he opened his eyes, and the master then said, Dead men don't speak. So, and he told him to get up and leave. This is a very important aspect because in order to be psychologically dead, all those defects that we have inside of us, all these egos, as they are called in the esoteric science, the egos, the defects that we have, in a sort of level demons, all these bad things we have in our character, inside of us, all this must die. So this is the psychological death, but a very important aspect that we can learn from this story is that, as the master said, dead men don't speak. So it's quite important that in order to die psychologically, you have in some sort of we can say now it's like a metaphor, not to speak, not to respond, and stop reacting in the situations we have in life. So when we stop reacting, then we are dead, because dead do not react. So something inside of us dies, but then something new arrives. With the new, it's also those things that essence has, those things that belong to our essence and belong to our beings, to our innermost. A very important aspect of this, it's to be able to, as we said, not to react in the situations that come in us. For example, if someone comes and insult us, we usually get offended, offended and we respond with something. We always have a reaction to this, but the most important is to be able to not to react in a matter that we have we are accustomed to. We usually react with the same manner to the same situations. So if we really die, if all the defects in us die, then we stop reacting in the same manner, and in some part we stop reacting at all. So a most important factor of this aspect of dying psychologically is to also have patience. It's a very important thing to have patience and humility, because in order to die for one, to really die psychologically, speaking always metaphorically, you have we have to have humility and patience and a closed mouth to stop reacting. This is what all Zen masters do. If you see from their stories, they do not react to the situations. They just leave the situations be as they are, because they die psychologically. So we are going to the next story, which is called Good and Bad. When Bankei did the meditative weeks of isolations, students from many parts of Japan came to attend. In one of those meetings, a student caught stealing. The act reported to Bankei with a request to expel the guilty student. Bankei, though, ignored the request. Later on, the student got caught again to steal, and once more Bankei ignored the subject. This made his students angry, and they conducted a formal written request asking the expulsion of the thief. Otherwise, they would all leave. When Bankei read the request, he gathered all of them in front of him and said to them, "You are wise, my brothers. You know good and bad, and you can go somewhere else to study if you want. But this poor brother does not know yet what's good and bad. Who will teach him if not me? I will keep him here even if all of you leave." After these words, tears cleaned the face of the brother who had stolen. All the desire for stealing has vanished from him. Very nice story too. This shows the mentality of a master, which is quite different from the students, because he has much more consciousness than the students, and much more passions, and he wants to teach. So this also shows us that there is a different way of thinking between a master and the students, because the master wants to help a student to learn, wants to help the essence of the student. As we said in the previous lectures, the previous lecture we have given in the Oriental stories. But this is the most essential part of the master, that a true master wants to teach, wants to collaborate with the essence of the student. And we can see again here that the other students that were not thieves, of course they thought they were better than the thief, although they might have other defects themselves, but this shows pride. And as their master told them, "You're wise, so if you're wise and you know what's good or bad, I want students who do not know what is good and bad, and who are ready to learn, and who say, I don't know." Because if we know, as we said previously, there's no point of learning, there's no point for someone to teach us, because it's okay, we already know everything, and this is fine with us. So there's no point having a master. Why having a master if we already know everything? or if we are at the same level of the master. There's no point to have one. So that's why the master told them that you can go if you want to, but I will stay here and teach this one. This also reminds us, as Westerns, the story of Jesus, who had with him all the poor people, all those people who had were full of sins, the sinners, and all those that society thought were weak, and they were his students. Why this? Because there is no point if you have someone who already is there or thinks already he is there. There's no point giving for a master giving an energy to teach him something. And this is why in our next video, which will be with which we'll call the Great Masters, we are going to see a story from our dear masters and how they are trying to teach us. In order to have a good mentality of a student, we always have to be able to be open to the new, to never think we know more, we know better, because many times we don't. We just think that we know, but we don't know. We have always to contemplate on things. We can't just think that we know everything, and we always know to do the right thing. We would be perfect, and we most of the times we are not. Our actions are imperfect, our thoughts are imperfect, our feelings are imperfect. So who are we eventually? We are not, of course, we are not who we think we are, and there are many things for us to learn. So we need a master, and the master can be in the physical plane, can be in the astral plane, can be our innermost, because there is a divine part in us uh, that's the master in us, which is our innermost. But in order for our innermost to be able to express and to develop a relationship with our innermost, it is very important to work consciously and each and every day of our lives for many years, with the three factors of the revolution of the consciousness. So this is why we need masters, and this is why when many times we don't have a master in the physical plane, we might seek a master in the astral plane. This is why Master Samael Aun said that it's important to be able to do an astral travel in order to take the teachings direct from the masters.